Okay, continuing on. Is there anybody here for a youngster booked in the name of Murdstone from Blunderstone, Suffolk, to be left till called for? Nobody answered. Try Copperfield, if you please, sir. Down. Is there anybody here for a youngster booked in the name of Murdstone from Blunderstone, Suffolk, but owning to the name of Copperfield, to be left till called for? Said the guard. Come, is there anybody? No, there was nobody. I looked anxiously around, but the inquiry made no impression on any of the bystanders, if I except a man in gaiters with one eye, who suggested that they had better put a brass collar round my neck and tie me up in the stable. A ladder was brought, and I got down after the lady, who was like a haystack, not daring to stir until her basket was removed. The coach was clear of passengers by that time. The luggage was very soon cleared out. The horses had been taken out before the luggage, and now the coach itself was wheeled and backed off by some hostlers out of the way. Still, nobody appeared to claim the duster from Blunderstone, Suffolk. And Crusoe, who had nobody to look at him and see that he was in solitary, I went into the booking office, and by invitation of the clerk on duty, passed behind the counter and sat down on the scale at which they weighed the luggage. Here, as I sat looking at the parcels, packages, ever since associated with that morning, a procession of most tremendous considerations began to march through my mind. Supposing nobody should ever fetch me, how long would they consent to keep me there? Would they keep me long enough to spend 7 shillings? Should I sleep at night in one of those wooden bins with the other luggage, and wash myself at the pump in the yard in the morning? Or should I be turned out every night and expected to come again to be left till called for when the officer opened the next day? Supposing there was no mistake in the case, and Mr. Murdstone had devised this plan to get rid of me, what should I do? If they allowed me to remain there until my 7 shillings were spent, I couldn't hope to remain there when I began to starve. That would obviously be inconvenient and unpleasant to the customers, besides entailing on expenses. If I started off at once and tried to walk back home, how could I ever find my way? How could I ever hope to walk so far? How could I make sure anyone but Peggotty, even if I got back? Or a sailor, I was such a little fellow that it was most likely they wouldn't take me in. These thoughts, and 100 other such thoughts, turned me burning hot and made me giddy with apprehension and dismay. I was in the height of my fever when a man entered and whispered to the clerk, who presently slanted me off the scale and pushed me over to him as if I were weighed, bought, delivered and paid for. As I went out of the office, hand in hand with this new acquaintance, I stole a look at him. Hello, young man, with hollow cheeks and a chin almost as black as Mr. Murdstone's, but there the likeness ended, for his whiskers were shaved off, and his hair, instead of being glossy, was rusty and dry. He was dressed in a suit of black clothes, which were rather rusty and dry too, and rather short in the sleeves and legs, and he had a white neckerchief on that was not over clean. He did not and do not suppose that this neckerchief was all the linen he wore, but it was all he showed or gave any hint of. "You're the new boy?" he said. "Yes, sir," I said. I supposed I was. I didn't know. "I'm one of the masters at Salem House," he said. I made him a bow and felt very much overawed. I was so ashamed to allude to a commonplace thing like my box to a scholar and a master at Salem House that we had gone some little distance from the yard before I had the hardihood to mention it. We turned back, on my humbly insinuating that it might be useful to me hereafter, and he told the clerk that the carrier had instructions to call for it at noon. "If you please, sir," I said, when we had accomplished about the same distance as before. "Is it far?" "It's down by Blackheath," he said. "Is that far, sir?" I diffidently asked. "It's a good step," he said. "We shall go by the stagecoach. It's about 6 miles. I was so faint and tired that the idea of holding out for 6 miles more was too much for me. I took heart to tell him that I had had nothing all night, and that if he would allow me to buy something to eat, I should be very much obliged to him. He appeared surprised at this. I see him stop and look at me now, and after considering for a few moments, said he wanted to call on an old person who lived not far off, and that the best way would be for me to buy some bread or whatever I liked best that was wholesome, and make my breakfast at our house, where we could get some milk. Accordingly, we looked in at a baker's window, and after I had made a series of proposals to buy everything that was bilious in the shop, and he had rejected them one by one, we decided in favour of a nice little loaf of brown bread which cost me 3 pence. Then, at a grocer's shop, we bought an egg and a slice of streaky bacon, which still left me what I thought a good deal of change out of the second of the bright shillings, and made me consider London a very cheap place. These provisions laid in, we went on through a great noise and uproar that confused me weary head beyond description, and over a bridge which no doubt was London Bridge. Indeed, I think he told me so, but I was half asleep, until we came to the poor person's house, which was a part of some almshouses, as I knew by their look, and by an inscription on a stone over the gate which said they were established for 25 poor women. The master at Salem House lifted the latch of one of a number of little black doors that were all alike, and had each a little diamond-paned window on one side, and another little diamond-paned window above, and we went into the little house of one of these poor old women who was blowing a fire to make a little saucepan boil. On seeing the master enter, the old woman stopped with the bellows on her knee, and said something that I thought sounded like, "My Charlie!" But on seeing me come in too, she got up, and rubbing her hands, made a confused sort of half curtsy. "Can you cook this young gentleman's breakfast for him, if you please?" said the master at Salem House. "Can I?" said the old woman. "Yes, can I, sure." "How's Mrs. Fibbitson today?" said the master, looking at another old woman in a large chair by the fire, who was such a bundle of clothes that I felt grateful to this hour for not having sat upon her by mistake. "Ah, she's poorly," said the first old woman. "It's one of her bad days. If the fire was to go out through any accident, I verily believe she'd go out too, and never come to life again." As they looked at her, I looked at her also. Although it was a warm day, she seemed to think of nothing but the fire. I fancied she was jealous even of the saucepan on it, and I have reason to know that she took its impressment into the service of boiling my egg and broiling my bacon in dudgeon, for I saw her, with my own discomfited eyes, shake her fist at me once, when those culinary operations were going on, and no one else was looking. The sun streamed in at the little window, but she sat with her own back and the back of the large chair towards it, screening the fire as if she were sedulously keeping it warm, instead of it keeping her warm, and watching it in a most distrustful manner. The completion of the preparations for my breakfast by relieving the fire gave her such extreme joy that she laughed aloud, and a very unmelodious laugh she had, I must say. I sat down to my brown loaf, my egg, and my rasher of bacon, with a basin of milk besides, and made a most delicious meal. While I was yet in the full enjoyment of it, the old woman of the house said to the master, "Have you got your flute with you?" "Yes," he returned. "Have a blow at it," said the old woman coaxingly. "Do." The old master, upon this, put his hand underneath the skirts of his coat and brought out his flute in 3 pieces, which he screwed together and began immediately to play. My impression is, after many years of consideration, that there never can have made the most dismal sounds I have ever heard produced by any means, natural or artificial. I don't know what the tunes were, if there were such things in the performance at all, which I doubt, but the influence of the strain upon me was, first, to make me think of all my sorrows until I could hardly keep my tears back, then to take away my appetite, and lastly, to make me so keep my eyes open. They began to close again, and I begin to nod as the recollection rises fresh upon me. Once more the little room with its open corner cupboard and its square-backed chairs and its angular little staircase leading to the room above and its 3 peacock's feathers displayed over the mantelpiece. I remember wondering when I first went in what that peacock would have thought if he had known that what his finery was doomed to come to fades before me, and I nod and sleep. The flute becomes inaudible, the wheels of the coach are heard instead, and I am on my journey. The coach jolts, I wake with a start, and the flute has come back again, and the master at Salem House is sitting with his legs crossed, playing it dolefully, while the old woman of the house looks on delighted. She fades in her turn, and he fades and flute. No master, no Salem House, no David Copperfield, no anything but heavy sleep. I dreamed, I thought, that once while he was blowing into this dismal flute, the old woman of the house, who had gone nearer and nearer to him in her ecstatic admiration, leaned over the back of his chair and gave him an affectionate squeeze round the neck which stopped his playing for a moment. I was in the middle state between sleeping and waking, either then or immediately afterwards, for as he resumed, it was a real fact that he had stopped playing. I saw and heard the same old woman ask Mrs. Fibbitson if it wasn't delicious, meaning the flute, to which Mrs. Fibbitson replied, "Aye, aye, yes," and nodded at the fire, to which I am persuaded she gave the credit of the whole performance. When I seemed to have been dozing a long while, the master at Salem House unscrewed his flute into the 3 pieces, put them up as before, and took me away. We found the coach very near at hand and got upon the roof, but I was so dead sleepy that when we stopped on the road to take up somebody else, they put me inside where there were no passengers, and where I slept profoundly until I found the coach going at a foot-pace up a steep hill among green leaves. Presently it stopped and had come to its destination. A short walk brought us, I mean the master and me, to Salem House, which was enclosed with a high brick wall and looked very dull. Over a door in this wall was a board with Salem House upon it, and through a grating in this door we were surveyed, when we rang the bell, by a surly face, which I found, on the door being opened, belonged to a stout man with a bull neck, a wooden leg, overhanging temples, and his hair cut close all round his head. "The new boy," said the master. The man with the wooden leg eyed me all over. It didn't take long, for there was not much of me, and locked the gate behind us and took out the key. We were going up to the house among some dark, heavy trees when he called after my conductor, "Hello!" We looked back, and he was standing at the door of a little lodge where he lived, with a pair of boots in his hand. "Here the cobbler's been," he said, "since you've been out, Mr. Mal, and he says he can't mend 'em any more. He says there ain't a bit of the original boot left, and he wonders you expect it. With these words he threw the boots towards Mr. Mell, who went back a few paces to pick them up and looked at them, very disconsolately, I was afraid, and we went on together. I observed then, for the first time, that the boots he had on were a good deal the worse for wear, and that his stocking was just breaking out in one place, like a bud. Salem House was a square brick building with wings, of a bare and unfurnished appearance. All about it was so very quiet that I said to Mr. Mell I supposed the boys were out, but he seemed surprised at my not knowing that it was holiday time, that all the boys were at their several homes, that Mr. Creakle, the proprietor, was down by the seaside with Mrs. and Miss Creakle, and that I was sent in holiday time as a punishment for my misdoing, all of which he explained to me as we went along. I gazed upon the schoolroom into which he took me, as the most forlorn and desolate place I had ever seen. I see it now, a long room with 3 long rows of desks and 6 of forms, and bristling all round with pegs for hats and slates. Scraps of old copybooks and exercises litter the dirty floor. Some silkworms' houses made of the same materials are scattered over the desks. 2 miserable little white mice left behind by their owner are running up and down in a fusty castle made of pasteboard and wire, looking in all the corners with their red eyes for anything to eat. A bird in a cage very little bigger than himself makes a mournful rattle now and then in hopping on his perch 2 inches high or dropping from it, but neither sings nor chirps. There is a strange, unwholesome smell upon the room, like mildewed corduroys, sweet apples wanting air, and rotten books. There could not well be more ink splashed about if it had been roofless from its first construction, and the skies had rained, snowed, hailed, and blown ink through the varying seasons of the year. Mr. Mell having left me while he took his irreparable boots upstairs, I went softly to the upper end of the room, observing all this as I crept along. Suddenly I came upon a pasteboard placard, beautifully written, which was lying on the desk, and bore these words: "Take care of him, he bites." I got upon the desk immediately, apprehensive of at least a great dog underneath, but though I looked all around with anxious eyes, I could see nothing of him. I was still engaged in peering about when Mr. Mell came back and asked me what I did up there. "I beg your pardon, sir," says I. "If you please, I'm looking for the dog." "Dog?" says he. "What dog? Isn't it a dog, sir? Isn't what a dog? That's to be taken care of, sir, that bites." "No, Copperfield," says he gravely. "That's not a dog, that's a boy. My instructions are, Copperfield, to put this placard on your back. I am sorry to make such a beginning with you, but I must do it." With that he took me down and tied the placard, which was neatly constructed for the purpose, on my shoulders like a knapsack, and wherever I went afterwards I had the consolation of carrying it. What I suffered from that placard nobody can imagine. Whether it was possible for people to see me or not, I always fancied that somebody was reading it. It was no relief to turn round and find nobody, for wherever my back was, there I imagined somebody always to be. That cruel man with the wooden leg aggravated my sufferings. He was an authority, and if he ever saw me leaning against a tree or a wall or the house, he roared out from his lodge door in a stupendous voice, "Hallo, you, sir, you, Copperfield, show that badge conspicuous or I'll report you." The playground was a bare gravelled yard open to all the back of the house and the offices, and I knew that the servants read it, and the butcher read it, and the baker read it, that everybody, in a word, who came backwards and forwards to the house of a morning when I was ordered to walk there, read that I was to be taken care of for a bit. I recollect that I positively began to have a dread of myself as a kind of wild boy who did bite. There was an old door in this playground on which the boys had a custom of carving their names. It was completely covered with such inscriptions. In my dread of the end of the vacation and their coming back, I could not read a boy's name without inquiring in what tone and with what emphasis he would read. Take care of him, he bites. There was one boy, a certain J. Steerforth, who cut his name very deep and very often, who I conceived would read it in a rather strong voice and afterwards pull my hair. There was another boy, one Tommy Traddles, who I dreaded would make game of it and pretend to be dreadfully frightened of me. There was a third, George Demple, who I fancied would sing it. I have looked, a little shrinking creature, at that door, until the owners of all the names, there were 45 and 40 of them in the school then, Mr. Mell said, seemed to send me to Coventry by general acclamation, and to cry out, each in his own way, take care of him, he bites. It was the same with the places at the desks and forms. It was the same with the groves of deserted bedsteads I peeped at on my way to and when I was in my own bed. I remember dreaming night after night of being with my mother as she used to be, or of going to a party at Mr. Peggotty's, or of travelling outside the stagecoach, or of dining again with my unfortunate friend the waiter, and in all these circumstances making people scream and stare by the unhappy disclosure that I had nothing on but my little nightshirt and that placard. In the monotony of my life, and in my constant apprehension of the reopening of the school, it was such an insupportable affliction. I had long tasks every day to do with Mr. Mell, but I did them, there being no Mr. and Miss Murdstone here, and got through them without disgrace. Before and after them I walked about, supervised, as I have mentioned, by the man with the wooden leg. How vividly I call to mind the damp about the house, the green cracked flagstones in the court, an old leaky water butt, and the discoloured trunks of some of the grim trees, which seemed to have dripped more in the rain than other trees, and to have blown less in the sun. At one we dined, Mr. Mell and I, at the upper end of a long bare dining room, full of deal tables and smelling of fat. Then we had more tasks until tea, which Mr. Mell drank out of a blue teacup, and I out of a tin pot. All day long, and until 7 or 8 in the evening, Mr. Mell at his own detached desk in the schoolroom worked hard with pen, ink, ruler, books, and writing paper, making out the bills, as I found, for last half year. When he had put up his things for the night, he took out his flute and blew at it, until I almost thought he would gradually blow his whole being into the large hole at the top and ooze away at the keys. I picture my small self in the dimly lighted rooms, sitting with my head upon my hand, listening to the doleful performance of Mr. Mell and conning tomorrow's lessons. I picture myself with my books shut up, still listening to the doleful performance of Mr. Mell, and listening through it to what used to be at home, and to the blowing of the wind on Yarmouth Flats, and feeling very sad and solitary. I picture myself going up to bed among the unused rooms, and sitting on my bedside crying for a comfortable word from Peggotty. I picture myself coming downstairs in the morning, and looking through a long ghastly gash of a staircase window at the school bell hanging on the top of the outhouse with a weathercock above it, and dreading the time when it shall ring, J. Steerforth and the rest to work. Such time is only second in my foreboding apprehensions to the time when the man with the wooden leg shall unlock the rusty gate to give admission to the awful Mr. Creakle. I cannot think I was a very dangerous character in any of these aspects, but in all of them I carried the same warning on my back. Mr. Mell never said much to me, but he was never harsh to me. I suppose we were company to each other without talking. I forgot to mention that he would talk to himself sometimes, and grin and clench his fist, and grind his teeth, and pull his hair in an unaccountable manner. But he had these peculiarities. At first they frightened me, though I soon got used to them.